Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello and welcome to Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Quentin Bedwell.
Professor
Quentin Bedwell, yes. Dr. Professor
of Doom.
And we are going to be having a light show tonight, just two of us, and we're going to be talking about every industry professionals' favorite acronym, CPEs, or Continued Professional Education.
Yes.
And, how that applies in comics as well, because you should always be keeping up on stuff, learning what's new, learning what's fresh. And,
agreed.
Yeah, I got some resources pulled up, which we can go over and just talk about the general concepts and like your learning methodologies. If we're getting to that, we gotta do our normal check-ins. So, Quentin, what have you been up to this week? What have you been reading, watching, playing, listening to?
Well, I haven't really. Let's see. I've been watching The Expanse when I get a chance.
Okay.
Let's see. Just been watching a lot of the news, just so I'm aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. I got to play DayZ the other night.
Nice.
Pretty neat. Friend of mine called me up, and he's been messaging me the last few days, and I finally got on there. And man, it was so good after all this time to get back and play some.
Nice.
So, That's about it, though.
Okay. I have on my end. I've actually been working on some certifications myself, so I've mostly been watching video courses. Besides that, what have I been watching? Besides that, well, just the usual G4 stuff. It's really the only TV I watch now is G4. Reading, it's been mostly Python. I've had a boring week.
Yeah.
It's been mostly Python and Linux courses on like what's new or like Ars Technica articles. What fun stuff I've been reading recently. I just recently went there and caught up some more on Department of Truth. So that's been super fun getting into how they defined subjective reality and all the fun conspiracy theories there, and getting into some of the different sub characters that haven't been featured as much in the first volume. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know Pete and Tommy keep on posting like shots of the book 4 of Trump's, inked and penciled, and man,
That looks good.
I am just itching to get that. I cannot wait.
Oh yeah. Playing wise, I haven't played new stuff. The new Destiny expansion has been super great, but recently I just got into a game called Hell Let Loose, which is a tactical shooter set during World War II. It's a big like 100-person lobby multiplayer game. So you have like 50 guys on the Allied or the Soviet side and 50 guys on the German side. And yeah, it's proximity chat, so it's hilarious. Just conversations you run into,
like classic DayZ. Yeah, yeah.
We played a lot of that last night actually with some friends. But that's been super fun, just trying that and getting into it. I haven't played like a shooter that wasn't Destiny in a while, so that's been fun.
Yeah. So are you taking a break on Destiny, or just to play some other games right at the moment?
I'm actually getting back on Destiny a lot more than I have before. It's just that I took Monday and like Sunday was mostly playing Hell Let Loose.
I don't like this.
But yeah, the new expansions are super great between the story and everything, so I've been enjoying that. And today's the reset, so I'll be hopping on there tonight. Oh, and also, probably mentioned at the top of the show, but today is also International Women's Day. So tell your wife, your mother, your partner, your girlfriend, whatever, tell them you appreciate them.
Yep, with Zales. Go to Zales. Yeah, go spend some money on them. Matter of fact, you should go right now. Mine's in the bed. So, oh well.
Yeah. There you go.
She gets enough days. Sick of this mess.
Alrighty. So yes, today we're going to be talking about continued professional education, and how that works in comics. So I guess to break it down, when you're trying to get into comics, you don't even need like a really any sort of formal education as long as you have can develop the skill for it, which requires already kind of your own self-paced learning to develop the skills.
Yep.
But even if you do get your formal education, like I did, and like some others did in our company, and you get your bachelor's or your master's degree in the field, the stuff you learn may not be as applicable, down the line during your professional career. Definitely not probably like 10 years. It's probably everything you learn is probably going to be outdated. But even now, like with how fast things pace, like techniques and technology is probably going to change within the next 2 years. Like every cycle, there's going to be a new tool out, or someone's going to.
Pretty soon we'll be doing it virtually with like a visor on our head, and
everything will be in the metaverse. Yeah. Actually, that'd be funny. Just like a metaverse like finger paint comic.
Yeah.
There you go. So it's usually your employers usually love it when you're doing courses or whatever that contribute continue to professional education credits, and sometimes they even pay you back for it, which is super nice if they do. But even then, if you're in a field where everything is kind of, you don't know how to get a kickback for it, but the field is self-paced, like comics, where you create, unless you're on a publisher deadline, but more or less you create on your own deadline. You don't. If I don't write the script for the comic, it doesn't. My copy does not get made, so I have to do that first step there. So we're going to go over how you stay up on things, essentially. So I know Quentin and I both have day jobs. I don't know. Quentin's job is more closely tied to comics, but with illustration. Before I start there, because that's probably the most generally applicable way into continuing your education as a working adult. But for your job, do they what sort of a continued education do they expect, or do they is that something that gets brought up at all, or is it something they offer?
Well, in my particular field, they are always looking for graphic artists. And basically you can start working in like graphic art. They usually want a college education. It's usually listed if you ever go for look on any sites for jobs. They'll want you to have, so much time in this program and that program. And, it's just a huge plus if you can actually illustrate, because there is a difference between a graphic artist and an illustrator. And if you can do both, you can you can have just about whatever job you want in graphic art. I do graphic art for t-shirts, also for other printed things, caps, cups, all kinds of stuff. I have to make logos, and my job is to do the custom stuff. So if a school wants their mascot beating another mascot, or they want them running down the field, and the other person's mascot, being trod underfoot, or maybe there was one I did where there was the opposing team's mascot running, and their mascot was in a plane coming down behind them, like shooting. It was crazy. So I do that kind of stuff. I do the really crazy, wild stuff. And that really keeps me sharp on all kinds of illustration, because I have to illustrate all the time. But what I was getting to, I'm getting sidetracked. When I started this job, I've been doing arts or doing graphic design since I was 15, and that was like when computers first hit, and there wasn't even a term graphic artist yet. Computers had just got into the realm of doing logos, or not logos, but t-shirt screen printing stuff. So I've kind of dib-dabbed in it all these years. And so when I started, I had no formal education, but I knew everything about the business, because I worked in a small shop before when I was younger, and I knew how to do everything all the way from printing all the way up. So, a lot of graphic artists nowadays, they get turned out of school and they know everything you want to know about the programs, and they're lightning fast.
Yeah.
On the programs, but as far as what they're doing the graphic art for, they don't have a clue. There's a lot of stuff that you have to know outside of just the programs to be able to do what we do. You have to know where it's going. There's little, there's little trade things that you got to know, like dot gain. What is that? And, all the other jargon we can sit here and talk about. But so when I put in for this job, I had no college. They were asking specifically for somebody who had college, but whenever they saw my resume, they were just like, and saw some of my samples, they were like, yeah, come on in. And so I've been there now for 15 years, and having to do the kind of artwork that I do, that really keeps me honed in. We have meetings over new software. We talk about new software all the time, but mainly we've been using Adobe since forever. So, but we do have to have other, experience in other software because we have to do rosters and all that kind of stuff. You've seen the shirts that have the team names on the back. So, they do want you to continue your education if it doesn't get in the way of your production.
Right.
But as far as the comics, I do this on the side, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no substitute for doing it, just doing it. It is a perishable skill, even though I do graphic art and an illustration during the day. Comic art and sequential art is very different. That's why most writers want to see not just your pinups; they want to see your sequential art because there's a difference between doing a pinup and telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to do it, and you get better the more you do. And I'd say that if you're an artist that you're not fortunate enough, and I'm very fortunate to be able to have a job, but I decided a long time ago that I wanted a job doing art so that I could stay on top of my art
Mm-hmm.
and keep on doing it. But if you don't have that, if you're not blessed enough to do a job daily that forces you to illustrate, then I would say you need to be drawing something every day. When I get off or when I'm on lunch, I'm doodling. I'm drawing stuff that I like to draw instead of just something that somebody's asking for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching YouTube videos this week on how to color comics, color them fast. Sometimes I'm watching stuff about inking. Sometimes I'm watching some of the, greats, just sit there and sketch. I'm always looking in, and every time I pick up a comic, I don't collect comics. I've said this before, like most people. Some people are going for the story. I am kind of going for the story, but mostly for the art. I collect by artist, not by title, but by artist. And I've got a whole list of people that whenever I go into a comic book store, unless I see somebody that's really good, and like an artist I haven't heard of, I usually try to stick to those artists, and I study. I will study that book. I'll buy a book and I'll study it. What usually happens is I start reading about halfway through the book while I'm looking at the art, and then I'll go back and read the whole thing. But then I really dive in and I study how thick their lines are. Technical stuff, all the art stuff. I study it, and I notice the shadows and the lighting and the colors and all that. So I mean, education. This is a perishable skill. You really need to invest yourself into it. So
definitely.
That's on the art side.
Yeah. And kind of relating to my day job. My day was a little more stringent on the renewal of education and certifications because I work in a very regulated industry at the moment. So we need to make sure that we're compliant and we're not doing anything that's going to need someone to trouble.
Absolutely, yeah.
So every year or so we have to take so many courses to renew our certifications.
Yeah.
And
my wife has to do that. She's a nurse, and
yeah,
she has to stay up to date on stuff.
Yeah. And some of that stuff is pretty dry, but when you get to a point where maybe you're looking at either moving into a new field, or if it's when something actually new industry comes out. I'm sorry if there's background noise. That's actually a pretty good tool to work with and skill to develop, because a lot of places are going to look more so at your sort of, but they also take that into my writing. So the amount of time I spend working on my day job certifications, I try to take the same methodology to, okay, if I'm trying to be certified in writing or whatever, how much time am I going to spend going through video courses or, if you're working in some fields, you might have lab work you need to do. But for us, our lab work is probably the best lab work in that it's, are you actually drawing? Are you actually writing? Are you actually illustrating? So having actually one guy I'm watching for, I am in the point where I'm considering switching fields. So I'm watching video courses on getting my pen test certifications, and one of the guys who puts out good video courses for that, he has a saying that for any sort of certification you're studying for, you need three good things: a good video course, a good book, and good lab.
Yep.
And you can do that all self-paced, so you don't need to worry about anything else. So taking
That's
time
awesome.
to actually do are you watching videos on what you're doing? Are you reading up on what's new? And then are you actually doing it? Are you actually doing the work? Because that's the best way to learn it, is to actually do
Let
it.
me tell you, we are in a good time right now, because when I was coming in,
Mhm.
as I said, I was 15, and at the time I got hired on. Actually, I was 14. I was almost 15.
Mhm.
And they had seen my artwork. They needed some art done for a biker rally.
Yeah.
And the local screen printer saw some of my stuff, and one of the girls that worked there folding shirts, she said, "Oh, I know a guy from school." And so they came to my house, got me to draw this biker, and doing these different things. And anyway, I was just an illustrator for a long time,
Yeah.
because back then there was no internet.
Mhm.
And when I say back then, we're talking 90s. We're talking 92, 91. And so back then, if you wanted to learn something, you had to apprentice under somebody.
Oh,
You
yeah.
had to follow somebody around. You had to intern. And there's a lot of people, especially in the art community, when it had to do with t-shirt screen printing, that they didn't want to show you,
Mhm.
because you knowing would take business away from them.
Yep.
Matter of fact, when I started airbrushing, and I did that for a while, you had to sign papers. Different places I worked, you had to sign papers saying that after you left there, you wouldn't work within 100 miles of whatever
Mhm.
airbrush artist was letting you work there. Um, they were real particular about that. But now, the age we live in, if you want to know something, you can get on YouTube, you can read books and put it all together. You couldn't do that before,
Yeah. And yeah, I can definitely. I actually got some stuff here. There's a good segue, so I can share my screen here for a few things. There you go. Yeah, kind of like we're talking about. So if you don't have if you're not going for formal education, but you still want to get, the eyes of a recruiter or whatever, you can just go out and test for certifications. And this is it. You can do this. Sometimes they usually will try to sell you a course, but usually you can just you pay the entry fee. You take the test, and if you pass, you can then put that on a LinkedIn, put your resume saying that I am certified by the company in their software.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have an employer that uses that software suite or whatever, and you're coming in and you're saying I'm certified in this, over someone who's well, I went to school for 4 years, but I haven't touched that software suite at all the time that you use every day. Especially in art and tech, they're going to go with the certified person over the uncertified person 95% of the time.
Yeah, unless you're intensely good. Yeah, I mean, some way or the other. That's for sure. And another thing I'd like to say, I had a friend of mine, a student, when I was a teacher, because after I screen printed, sometime after that, I ended up going to school for teaching. Anyway, he went to school for graphic art.
Oh, yeah.
And he had called me, and he was all upset because, he was saying, man, there's these people in my class and they just illustrate so good. They're so awesome. And I told him, that's all good and fine. But when you get into commercial art, it's not all about who is the best at drawing. If you show that you can do something in a timely fashion,
Oh yeah.
if you're fast, that means a lot. And a lot of times that's what they want because they're paying you for every minute that you spend on something. So if
Yeah.
you're moderately good, but you're fast,
Yeah.
holy moly,
And if you
they'll
know the
take you in a heartbeat.
and if you can show that you know the tools that you'll be working with, and you're not going to be like having to talk to your supervisor every like half hour asking like how do I do this, how do I do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's that. And, whenever some of these things come in, one of the things I have to do with these requests is I have to try to simplify them down and get what they want, but at the same time, I have to simplify it down considering that I can't spend all day on this one order.
Yeah.
I've got like a stack of orders that I have to get done before I can leave. I can't leave without getting that schedule done because it looks really bad if something goes past due. So, it's a big thing to think about too. But that's just in the field that I'm in. But
Sure.
I think it stands for a lot of stuff. That's
Definitely.
production.
Mhm.
When you're in a production environment,
Definitely.
there's a level of that in comics too. You don't need
Yeah.
to dilly dally around.
Yeah, we're not as stringent as like some of the bigger ones, but like if you're working for the big two, if you're not getting like 22 pages done in a month, like your contract's going to expire, and they're not going to renew
Yeah.
you.
That's right.
Yeah, and also bringing this into comics, you don't necessarily need to be certified in anything to work in comics. You just need to kind of show up and have it work. But what these certifications also do is they offer you a good education path if you're interested in that. So. Like now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about like, oh, if I'm illustrating, I'm using Adobe Illustrator. Like, but if they're not using, that, or they're using Clip Studio, like one or the other. And their certifications exist in both. And if you don't know that tool and you're looking to get into comics, you could look up the questions like the practice exams that are on like the Adobe Illustrator or the Clip Studio certifications. Like, okay, what do I need to know how to use this program? That seems to be kind of the standard in the industry. And for that, they'll offer their own like study guides, which you can use. Actually, having a certification if you're looking for the big two would probably help for getting that contract, because they're probably going to look for that as opposed to like your indies. If you don't know someone or their uncle, the having a certification is the next best thing.
Yeah.
The next, we're going into that. Like Quinn was saying, like we were saying, YouTube videos are great. If you type in what you're looking for and then don't do like fast, don't do tutorial, type in course.
Yeah.
And look for these verified channels that have like these longer courses, because it's if you just try to learn something in 5 minutes, that's going to teach you like one technique. It's not going to teach you everything you need to know. Like you can't rush it. It's time spent learning and time spent practicing.
And dude, when it comes to art, there's so many different, especially digital art. There's so many different ways to skin a cat. I'm telling you, if you just watch, you need to watch several different artists do their thing, because everybody does this stuff different, especially when it comes to the digital part, like coloring comics. I've got. Man, I've seen so many different ways, so many different approaches at every level. Shortcuts, even how people start out to the way they finish. It's like a black hole, all the different techniques that you can use. And if you're stuck on just one or two artists, you're only getting like a portion of the story.
Yes.
You definitely need to look around, make sure you have plenty of people that you're watching.
Oh yeah, and I thought this was hilarious, but like this one guy here, he's on 3 different channels, just all for their Illustrator course. So like he's moving around, I guess. But taking time to actually to work through a video course on what you're trying to do. So if you're if you're looking into, I mean, and you can just turn it into like illustration course or but and the basics of it. Like if you do know your Adobe Illustrator in and out, or if you do know the basics of illustration in and out, every so often go back and revisit that, because there's going to be new versions of the stuff we use. There's also going to be like new things that people discover, like, oh, if I'm drawing this way, this is one that's more efficient for me, and it's something you might not have thought of. So it might be something new that you want to experiment with. So changing up your own like art style every now and just to see if that works for you, if that is something you're comfortable with, or if you're going to stick with what you know. Just always bringing that new information to see like what you can improve or refine upon.
I'd say too, especially in the art field, you need to know what programs are out there, and don't be afraid to tinker with other programs just to see. And I don't mean tinker as in an hour. I mean, you need to give them a little bit of time, because, you know, I never would have found Clip Studio if I hadn't of actually when it came out, it was, you know, Mango Studio, but I would have never. I use this thing all the time, man, all the time. I use it more than Adobe, more than I ever did Adobe. But I was stuck on Adobe for everything because I had used it for so many years. And before that, I used CorelDRAW. And man, when I saw Mango Studio 4.0 debut, then, you know, I was a little skeptical at first, but when I started using it, man, it was just so powerful. The inking engine in it and all that kind of stuff. And you need to be aware, you know, what's out there. I mean, there's some even right now that are giving Adobe and even Clip Studio a run for their money. And they're just getting better by leaps and bounds all the time, you know. And you don't another thing, you don't have to spend what they're asking, you know, on some of these. There's cheaper alternatives too. Like if you don't have the cash to put down on some on Adobe or you know, Clip Studio, there's Metabang. That's another one that I wouldn't have even known about had I not been into, you know, had my eyes out looking for stuff. I mean, Metabang is free.
Yeah, I have not touched Photoshop since I got comfortable with GIMP, which is an open source Unix based.
GIMP, yep. That's a good one. Metabang, though, it is almost Clip Studio.
Yeah.
It is almost Clip Studio, and that it is absolutely free. If you get the app on your phone, on your desktop, it's absolutely free. If you get the app on your phone, you pay a one-time fee of $5. You got an art program. You can do comics in that thing. You can do all kinds of stuff. Whenever I draw on my phone, that's what I use. I use Metabang.
Yeah. And I'll get into keeping up on the industry here in a second, but that's a big thing. Is also just, you know, when you're not just educating yourself on your technique, but also just the industry as a whole, and that also includes, you know, what's new and also how the market is moving and everything like that. And you know, YouTube is awesome and fantastic for getting your free educational sources. There are also paid options, which some of them are good, some of them are not. One of them that is picking up a lot is Skillshare, and that's because it's actual professionals that get brought in to teach their subject matter. And I believe also Skillshare now offers their own certifications at the end there. So how much weight those hold in the field, yet to be seen. But any sort of certification, I mean, even like Lynda certifications will give you some sort of weight when you're. And if you don't know what Lynda is, it's like Skillshare, but more expensive and a little more bougie. But it's
bougie.
Yeah, exactly. But even just having those showing that, like, I went through like 8 hours of lecture and lab on this topic, it still shows that, like, well, one, you have the dedication to sit through that, but also that you've put in the work.
And that's one thing that I say, which I mean, there's quite a bit I say in favor of a paid course. Is you put yourself into an investment in whatever your craft is, or you know, and that helps.
Definitely.
Definitely helps to have some skin in the game. And a lot of times with paid courses, you will get more than not than what you would get out of something free, you know.
Yeah, because it's also the you know the instructors. So well on YouTube and stuff, they are getting ad rev and their own partnerships and stuff, so they have their own thing. But on these sort of like the instructor is getting paid exclusively for the value of their content and instruction. So that gives them a lot much more investment in being a good instructor.
Yeah.
And not just being, some sort of dry lecture that you have to sit through, but actually,
Yeah, because
make it engaging.
like whenever I watch art stuff, one thing you always hear is, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys, I haven't posted in a while," and so that tells you right there. A lot of the art people, they're kind of posting whenever they kind of feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you follow somebody specifically, you might wait weeks, for another lesson, or you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So like. But when
And
you pay for something, though, you have it available to you and plenty of it.
yeah, typically with these pay courses, like with Skillshare, the course has to be complete before they upload it. Same with if you're looking to move into tech, IT Pro TV is the same way, where it's they always have ongoing updates, but it's when you buy your subscription, it's this is the entire course you need to do to study up to get your CompTIA A+ or anything like that. So it's you're getting a more complete package. It's going to be more well-rounded typically. Something that I have found that works particularly well for writers, I don't know how it works for other people. It's a fun sheet. It's a hybrid of the two, and it's particularly Brandon Sanderson. But he has recorded. I don't know how the colleges let him do this or what happened, but BYU allows Brandon Sanderson to record and upload all of his lectures, and that's the school he teaches at. So you can go through an entire semester of Brandon Sanderson courses for free on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're looking into writing, that's kind of there's no real certification in writing other than like your publication credits, which is it is what it is. And for that, just throwing yourself out there. Shotgunning is probably going to be your best result, unless you know someone or their uncle. But so a lot of it is going to be your own self-paced education. There's no real certification to work to. But if you can find a lecture course like this, because the goal of this would be students going on to test out and pass the course and eventually get their bachelor's. This is already structured in that same way, so it's giving that structured path from beginning to end of building up that foundation and extrapolating upon it. Yes, Tommy, we're very excited for the next Kickstarter. We'll be getting into that more in about 20 minutes here at the top of the hour.
Yes. I can't wait.
I know. It's going to be so good. And then maybe talking about now now that we've given you like the kick in the butt to go out and learn more and study your field.
Yeah, whatever you're doing or you want to do. I mean, hey, if you're really serious about it, you'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
You won't have to have anybody telling you to do it. You won't have to have, somebody pushing you to do it. You'll do it. If you're serious about it, and if you're not serious about it, then don't think you're going to get anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know of another field that you don't need to kind of always have, some sort of practicing going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like if I don't write for a while, I can feel like I'm not as quick on like putting together beads, or I'm not as witty in my dialogue, or things aren't as sharp as they should be. And so, writing and practicing is great. But then also like seeing Brandon Sanderson has at this point like 20 more years writing experience than me. So going through the course and seeing like what tools has he picked up that I can use to kind of skip forward myself, that's incredibly helpful. Well,
also, think about it in the job market with whatever you've chosen to do. You have to go up against people like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're competing with those people. Yeah. And you're gonna have to be something at least decent. Yeah. you may not be people's first choice, but you need to be good enough to be, the second or third, or else it's going to mean the difference, especially if it's going to be your main bread and butter.
Yeah.
You definitely need to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to learn the skills that you need to learn
Yeah.
so that you can compete with
Mhm.
people. I mean,
Yeah, and that's also another thing. You hear all the time in a lot of fields. You always hear people talking about like, "I'm just waiting for that breakout. I'm just waiting to break in or whatever." And I mean, sure, there's a lot of waiting and then like throwing your head against the wall. But there's some people that you hear it from that um, you get that gut feeling like, oh, you have not put in the work already, or you have not cut your teeth.
yeah,
And sometimes they might say like, well, I couldn't afford a college. Like, well, sure, no one can anymore. But
yeah,
like,
exactly.
but you got guys like Gary Vee who did not go to any college, and right now he's one of the most successful guys in marketing. But if you're going for a certification, most cases like $200 to $300 for the test. Let's just save up like a couple months, like, and get that certification. And that right there is already you essentially cutting your teeth, saying that I know just as much as the guys who taught me this, plus my own experience. And so that's going to immediately give you that jump forward and get you that little bit of like proving before you get into the job field that a lot of like employers or recruiters are looking for.
Yeah, if you're serious about it, then you'll put the work in. But
Mhm.
if you're not, don't expect anything.
Yeah.
That's why we talk about the big two. With something like that, you have to be willing to devote all your time to it,
Yeah.
to getting your quality up far enough. Because the
Mhm.
thing is the person they're going to hire is already doing it.
Oh yeah.
They're already putting their time in. So
Mhm.
if you don't put yours, if you ever have any ideas that you're gonna, and then once you get there, you're gonna have to stay there
Mhm.
without some bloke coming along and taking it out from under you.
Yeah. You have to
So
constantly improve to make sure that you're the top dog.
yeah,
Yeah.
quality.
Mhm.
Work on the quality.
And then if you're like where we are, where we're doing this as like a side thing, and there's a lot of indie comics out here, so there needs to be quality in our work in order for it to not
Yep,
fall into the white noise. So we also need to put in that time to make sure that
that's right. When
yeah.
people are picking up the books,
Hmm.
I mean, it's going to be right there. When your book is sitting beside somebody else's book, or your table is parked beside somebody else's table at the con. It's going to be. You got to get them in. You got to
Yeah.
lead them in.
And there's no such thing as an overnight success. That's something
No,
constantly gets
no,
said in writing.
nope.
Yeah. Which one recent story for that we can relate to. Victoria Schwab, her most recent book, got credited by a lot of people about it's an overnight made her an overnight success, despite the fact that she had 3 published credits before that, all of which took several years to make.
Yep.
And she's been essentially working as a writer just now that she's a successful writer. But working in comics, like, you're not going to like pencil your first panel or write your first script, and the editor of Marvel or DC is not going to like pop into your computer say, hey, I like that.
Yep.
You need to cut your teeth in the small cons, put in that work to make sure you stand out, and keep on like working out until you can get it somewhere where your stuff stands out enough that it does get noticed.
Yep. And don't get discouraged by the people who are awesome either, because
Mhm.
let me tell you, if you look at some of their older stuff,
Oh yeah.
man, you look at some old Todd McFarlane, you see the progression there.
Hmm.
Jim Lee, all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, there's also degression too.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
seen that.
That's that's happens if you get complacent and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna keep on doing what I do because it works for me, but you're not putting in the lab work, or you're not seeing like what else could be out there to make yourself more efficient. I mean, also the problem I guess with art and field is it does rely on some fine motor muscles, which as you get older, some of those do tend to stop working the way you used to.
Yeah.
With writing, your wit may take a turn, or you may need to refresh it so you're not rehashing the same old stuff. So taking the time
And
to
getting with the times too. I can see how that would be a
Mhm.
thing. You being behind.
Yeah.
You know.
And that could also come into where like the market research is like, what are the current techniques? What are the current technologies being used? How can I like make myself efficient in the current landscape and still maintain what makes me me, but be kind of integrated into what exactly needs to happen. But kind of on a more meta note, before we get into prior ad read here, take some time also. Learn how to learn. Because if you grow up in most developed countries, you probably went through some sort of educational environment, in which case you had structured learning schedules, and some of them are kind of not great. It's kind of built straight from the factory age, trying to churn kids out into factories as soon as they turn 18. But other than like, there is science that goes into usually how these are laid out in the way they are. So if you're just at home grinding away at a YouTube video or reading away through like a user manual for something, or if you're, Lord forbid, if you're going through and reading like the elements of style, or going through and reading all of the line work manuals that exist, and not taking a break on that, your brain is going to explode. But think about how you're thinking. One thing that a lot of people recommend, which I have found works very well for me, is the Pomodoro method, which is a way of structuring your timing out and managing your time when you're working. So you find yourself using the time involved with the material much more efficiently than if you are dozing off at your book or at your screen. Taking 25 to 30 minutes on topic, take 5 minutes, grab your coffee, drink some water, get back into it, and go back.
Yep.
So you're doing it efficiently. You're not just sitting down and falling asleep on your book.
Absolutely. And another thing too is getting too messed up with perfectionism. That'll kill you too, because what looks better, one super duper awesome piece of art or 5 pretty awesome ones?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get carried away sometimes doing artwork, and like you just spend way too much time on one thing. I did that just this past week, and but I did start out thinking I was going to be slow on it because I was trying to experiment a little bit, try some new things, but I almost kind of went over my time limit. I actually did go over my time limit, and I was thinking, I need to go back and do this and do this, and I've just, I've lost interest now. So I was like, nope, I'm just going to leave it like it is. I'm going to start on something else, because I really, what looks better, this one super one, or 2 or 3 others, that I can add to it.
Was it Voltaire had said? Well, Voltaire, and then also I think he got quoted by Field Marshal Zhukov. And Zhukov took Berlin, so he knows what he's talking about. But perfection is the enemy of done, or perfection is the enemy of good. Both is kind of get misquoted around, but the idea, like, if you're trying to get something done, or if you're trying to get something like looking good, if you're trying to make it perfect, it's going to be neither.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right, Tommy. He likes 5 super duper looking pieces.
Yep.
That's what Tommy said.
Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, just taking time to think about how you're thinking, and certifications kind of help with that because they give you a goal you're working towards, but giving yourself also your own goal. So, if I'm writing something and I'm looking through like how do people do their pre-writing, how do people do their world building, I want to say like, well, I want to, by the end of my self-study here, I want to be able to effectively emulate what's being demonstrated, but for my own story idea over here, kind of do it from scratch in my own way. But if you're working with a tool or with something that has its own certification, that kind of gives you that immediate, like, I know when I'm done with something, when I can pass that practice exam or get that certification and feel comfortable and confident with my score there.
Writing. Yeah.
That is also other issues where like we can get certified in our tools. Like if I really got pressed for it. I could get certified in the Microsoft Office suite, but no. But we can get certified in tools, but the actual like art process, there's not really like an objective certification you can get in your line work for inking, other than getting a book out there.
No.
So
Yeah.
having your own goals and being able to set that, like, I know my education for this stage is complete, because education is never going to be fully complete, but I know that this stage is complete when I can do this for myself.
Yeah. My thing, my barometer, I can never tell. It's so crazy. When you're doing artwork, you look at it so much, and sometimes you miss a lot.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point sometimes because you're looking so close at it for so long, you don't really, if you don't back away and look at it from time to time, get away from it, get your eyes on something else, and then come back and look at it, it could be totally off, and
Yeah.
so it's the thing that I try to do is, like, I try to practice stuff until I can do it every time. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not drawing it and redrawing it and drawing it and redrawing it when I get to the table,
Yeah.
Um, and it's being able to think of something and put it down like you think of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. That's you want to be able to translate your thoughts as easily as possible and as quick as possible. And that's the only way that I've figured out how to figure out whether I'm getting better or I'm not getting better, or, if I'm getting something or not getting something.
Absolutely.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I always sense it's always like kind of that no, well, then when you can do something without having to glance up and see what you're following along with, how did it, or when you can do something to know that, like, okay, I did that, I like how that looked, I can move on
Yeah.
and do it again and look good.
Yeah. Here's one that everybody will be familiar with: is you have this cool pose in mind
Mm-hmm.
and you got it in your head and it looks so good in your head. But then you sit down to draw it and you get to the hands and he's holding something. And he's holding it at a certain angle and a certain way. He has his fingers, or even just doing this. He's coming at you.
Yeah.
But then you sit down there to do it, and you're like, man, I can't do this particular pose with the hands.
Yeah.
If you're a poor hands person, hands is something everybody's got to work on. I don't care how good you are, because you're going to have to eventually turn those hands, some way that you haven't done before. But anyway, what I'm saying is, that's how when you're improving, is when you've done hands so much and you've doodled them so much, you've practiced them to the point where you have that thought in your head: he's holding the sword this way, and I'm looking at this angle of the hand, and you sit there and you doodle that out, and it actually looks like that hand.
Mm-hmm.
That explains it the best, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, we are about at the top of the hour, so we're going to hit our ad read. Unfortunately, we don't have an ad cutaway for this at the moment, but we do have a link here, which I can pull up real quick.
When we come back, I'll start showing my art.
Absolutely. Yes. Using our handy dandy. Oh no, that's a Hyper-V visualizer. That's funny. There. Nice, right far. There you go.
Got it?
Go. Closing there. Where did we go?
You lost it.
I lost it.
You accidentally deleted it.
No. Thankfully, no one puts me in charge of the Kickstarter. There you go. Let's find it in here. It got linked before Aaron called everyone, I think. Yes, there we go. All right. go over here. We have a new thing going on. If you're interested at all in a comic that I've been pitching for forever now.
Jam.
And my former instructor, Sid Williams, he also has one of his classic horror stories coming out. But we have another Silverline feature coming out called Sirens #1 Remix. I wrote the title feature on Sirens for the Silverline website 2 years ago now. How long have I been working here? I don't know. And
Forever.
yeah. I mean, Wolfrunner was an idea that I wrote back in like 2016, 2017, and we finally turned it into a comic. Originally it was going to be a novel, but yeah, we got a new double feature coming out, which if you go to Kickstarter and find thank you, Tommy. I'm so excited for myself as well. I'm so excited for everyone to actually like see this fun little rattle thing's been rattling around in my head. Kickstarter.com/project/roll-on-demand. You can find it there. And you can go ahead and save it so you're notified on launch. It should be the 10th here, I believe, is our official date. Yeah, you can get your pre-order ready. Again, this is a Silverline Kickstarter. That means that the books are actually already done. You're not really kickstarting it other than like the printing process. What you're doing is placing a pre-order and saving your copy essentially, and getting our limited time collectibles. So no need to worry about the books like being delayed forever and ever like some other people. It's pretty much once it's done, it's off to the printer, and then Tommy's going to hand package it, put a little kiss on it, and send it off to you.
Yeah.
Yes. But Wolf Hunter is a World War II spy story. It is an alternate history in which the Tizard mission goes horribly wrong, and the prototype for radar gets stolen before it makes its way to America for mass production. And it's up to RAF Group Captain James Willard to conduct a counterintelligence operation on a very tight time frame, while also dealing with his own PTSD. So over the course of the story, he'll have to prove both to the people watching and to himself that he still has fight in him, and that he's not held down by the scars, both figurative and literal. But it's a very fun story. There's lots of action. There is a fight on top of a train. There's a fight inside a train. Planes are involved. There's lots of planes. No tanks yet. That's coming. We do have some other surprise vehicles at last there. So if you're interested in planes, trains, and automobiles meets Murder on the Orient meets Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, this is the book for you.
Planes, trains, automobiles.
Yes.
Where's your hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I guess I'll pitch Sirens as well. Written by Sid Williams and originally published in a different decade. This is a horror story set in the bayous of New Orleans, following a sort of it's also kind of a thriller. It's a private detective case dealing with sirens, as the name would imply, a supernatural curse, and an understanding of a perhaps a forbidden relationship that could transcend the curses bestowed upon two people. So it's a fun story. I remember reading that and enjoying it a lot. Yeah.
I want to get it and look at it. I want to get it and read it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very excited to actually see these and like get this in my hand.
You gonna frame it?
Probably. Yeah, this will be super fun. And if you're in the Salem, Oregon area, Saturday at Legacy Coffee Roasters, there will be kind of a meet and greet in and out event type thing. Stop by if you're in the area. We'll have QR codes posted so you can just scan the QR code and get taken straight to the Kickstarter from your phone. It'll be a good time. All right, and more stuff here, and then we'll get to Quentin's art here. Another part of your professional education is going to be the market and the technology therein. This is kind of the comics are kind of a fun one because we do literally have a giant sales chart to track, what's doing well. And while emulating what is doing well is a surefire way to make contrived drivel,
Yep.
it does give you an idea of, what sort of themes are playing well. We have a very clear theme playing well last year. But you might be able to think of like, oh, if I was writing the story, what would my story look like using
Yep.
like maybe some of these concepts, or what would my story look like if I was to, like, operate in that same sort of like mental space. And so no, we have our list from 2021 out, our top sellers. So congrats to Keanu Reeves on being number 3, and congrats to Spawn on knobbing a bunch of the top like 10 spots, and also Donny Cates and Venom, which was a kind of a no-brainer. That was my favorite book from the big 2 that year. Was the Venom run. That was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you can see like, oh, we're dealing with a lot of Spawn, Berserker, Venom. Moon Knight probably got boosted because of the show. Bounty Hunter Wars was super fun, but you might say like, oh, we're doing a lot with kind of these mercenary. Have I had an idea for mercenary or like a lone gunslinger rattling around in my head? Is that something I can play with, or have I been wanting to draw a character that looks kind of like this? Well, my character looked like this, And we're kind of talking about that idea of like being relevant to the times. You're not trying to emulate it, but you're just trying to figure out like what your story that fits kind of the contemporary zeitgeist looks like. Because that's the one weird thing where if you notice that like you might get like 2 or 3 movies that come out the same year that all have the same concept. Was that the one Armageddon, Arrival, and like something else all came out like the same year?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're all being written. Yeah, they're all being written separately. So like, there wasn't really any like property theft. It was
It's
literally
so crazy how that works. Yeah.
it's just a lot of people are like, oh, this is a cool idea, and then like if they're starts writing around, they're like, oh, I have an idea that sounded like that too. I want to write my story now too. Or you're like, oh, I've had, or something might be popping around. Like, oh, I am my coworker. I saw him drawing something like this, and I've been wanting to draw a character like this, and we got this new book that I know exactly how I want to draw this character now. It's about getting excited for your own idea, but not just being completely unrelated from what's doing well in the market. But it's a fun middle ground of following and understanding what everyone else seems to be excited about, but making that your own thing that you're also excited about.
Well, it's kind of like if you're in a town and you want to open up a business, sure, if you're passionate about something and you want to, you're passionate enough about it that you want to open up your business that way, that's good. But if you're just somebody who wants to open up a business just for the sake of you working for yourself and all that, one thing you need to do is you need to see, is there any businesses like this in my town?
Mm-hmm.
And if there is, that means there's going to be competition for you.
Yeah.
So it's best, if you're one of those kind of people that just want to open up a business, it's best if you see what's out there.
Yeah.
And see what's working, what's not working, and and base your ideas on that.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of what is in the market and what is going on out there before you. Now, you don't want to base everything on that. If you're passionate about doing this one story, hey, you go ahead, go for it.
Absolutely, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact, some of the best stories are the ones that people are enjoying. I know I do best on the artwork I want to do, not necessarily what other people want me to do all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, I have to kind of find something about something to get excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could be that one thing where, if writing Wolf Hunter was at a time, and now still kind of sort of the case where noir thrillers was kind of kicking off. We got like Altered Carbon was getting turned into a Netflix show. We had got Murder on the Orient Express adapted again, and it was actually a pretty good one. But I wanted to write kind of like a contained thriller, because those were like ideas that are like happening at the time, and that was like something that I was getting really excited, like really enjoying those stories that we told. But like, well, okay, what's the one that I want to write? And like, well, I'm kind of a history nerd and like a military technology nerd, so what if I made it based around military technology during World War II? which, if you look at it at the time, like, you're not going to get those influences other than like maybe some like influence of dialogue, but the elements are definitely there on being pulled from, the Poirot stories or whatever. And also now being released kind of at a still within that same zeitgeist where we were getting another sequel to Knives Out, which is kind of that same idea, and we're getting adaptation of was it Murder on the Nile, and so it's not like this. It's not intentionally like trying to be another like noir thriller. It's just that following the market and seeing what's doing well, but also doing what I'm excited about, not what I think would be like another copy of. Otherwise, I'd do a contemporary, smash cut, the murder detective story, not a technology heist, hard boiled spy story.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, that's another thing too with art or writing or stories. I mean, is you need to make sure that you got to do something that stands out. You can't, everybody's doing zombies, so I'll do something zombies. You make a decision just strictly on something like that. That's I think that's what Dean calls too much calculation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that He-Man?
Yes, it is.
Nice.
It's my version. It's a commission that I'm working on. I have a few. I've been working on this all day. Not this.
Yeah.
But I got a commission to do like kind of like my own take on them. Let me see. There's Trapjaw.
Nice.
And then I've got Triclops. So anyway, I'm having to do some Mo2 stuff. I say having to, but I really like to do this. This is one of the things I like about doing artwork is, like you said, you read a story and you say, how would I have done this? And sometimes when I see character designs or artwork or I think the same thing. How would I make this character?
Yeah.
And anytime I get to do something like this, I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like, that's very cool. I love the look of that Skeletor.
Yeah, I really love how he came out. I'm wanting to do a little something more with He-Man to kind of change him up a little bit. I'm not sure yet though.
Sure.
I haven't decided what I'm going to do with him yet. But I think I might add like a cape on him. But man, I really like those big deltoids.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that like not people may think about, the fact that a lot of stories that we know and love and think of incredibly original were created from someone looking at something like, how would I do that differently?
Yep.
You get a lot of art pieces that same way, where when someone sees a painting or a portrait, like, well, that was that clear, very clear. Someone looking at this, I'm like, well, actually, how do I change this? Star Wars was George Lucas trying to figure out how he's going to retell Seven Samurai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like to. Usually when I do something like this, I go all original. I just make my own characters.
Yeah.
Kind of with the mental basis of my version of whatever. And that's not stealing, folks. That's how it's done. That's you see stuff and it goes into your brain and it kind of salts your brain and it inspires you, to do new things. A lot of the stuff that I've done has been like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this, instead of this that I saw in this, what if it happened like this, or what if it looked like this, or I'm probably going to heavily change a lot of stuff here, like Castle Grayskull and all that kind of stuff. So I can't wait to get farther into this, but I had a Man at Arms too that I really liked. That I did. I didn't see it whenever I went back through here. There he is.
Oh yeah.
Let me put his mustache on there. Boom.
Yes. The most important part.
Yeah. That helmet I've always thought is so fat on his head.
It's super ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely like it a lot more narrow.
Yeah, I like it small and
Yeah.
to his head. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's like the concept of pastiche, the idea that everything that gets created is just an amalgamation of all the input mashed together and then regurgitated.
That's right.
And so, I mean, everything you're going to do is going to be unique because you have so many different inputs going into it. But the that also then leads into kind of the fun workaround, and that for a lot of creative work, some of your market research is just going to be reading new stuff or watching new stuff. So if you're ever at a point where like you're reading a comic or watching a movie, and your partner or whoever comes and asks like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm just doing work. I'm researching. I'm doing work right now."
Yeah. Yeah. Always look like you're perplexed about something, and they'll think you're busy.
Yeah, just start taking notes. Don't have to be good notes. Just start taking notes
Yeah.
whenever you're doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. Always walk around like. That's what George said on Seinfeld.
Yep.
Just always look upset about something. They'll think you're busy.
Exactly. We walk around with something in each hand and always look like you're upset about something. Everyone thinks that, yep, not to bother you. That joke came up in our office actually earlier. Someone's actually like, "Well, you always look like we're going to a meeting." And it's just because we're always like walking back and forth through the coffee machine, just always with the coffee in hand or standing around with like coffees in hand. But yeah, that's as far as like researching market material and everything like that goes, and like you were saying, if you're starting a business, you look at what's working, you look what's not working, but then you make it unique. I mean, if in your town every like donut shop closes down within a month, it's probably not need for a donut shop. But if coffee stores are staying open, okay. But what is your coffee store? What makes it any different than any of the other ones?
Yeah, you need to, if there's a lot of coffee stores in your place, too, you need to figure out some way of making yours a little bit different. Maybe you could sell coffee and, I don't know, you could have karaoke.
There you go.
Come on in here, read a book, have some karaoke.
That has actually worked for a store in my location. Is actually they're a place that has they're the karaoke coffee store. So if you don't want to go to like the weird bars, you guess it. Yeah, but honestly, like if you're in our market, and you're like actually looking at starting a coffee store, be the coffee store that sells comics. Honestly, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. We're joined by a rogue Aaron Humphreys. Oh, he's gone. We're joined by Aaron Humphreys.
Bye, Aaron.
Yeah, I didn't know how long you guys go until 10 o'clock, right?
Until 10 o'clock, yes.
Yeah. And my thing got done a little early, so I thought I'd jump on.
Yeah. We already pitched Wolf Hunter and Sirens coming out the 10th.
That's right.
And this new thing that I'm working on,
sort of He-Man
totally
thing?
original idea, Masters of the Universe.
Yes.
Never heard
I think
of
the
it.
title's a little long.
I think so too.
But
Should be called He-Man.
Yeah, his He-Man. That's a good name.
Isn't
Wow. That's cool. All right. I'm going to use that.
So what was the topic for tonight?
So today's topic is continuing education. So obviously in the professional field, we already kind of talked about like the natural path of getting certifications as a professional and how those might relate to comics. You might get a Adobe Illustrator certification or a Clip Studio certification, or just the idea of you constantly researching like how are people illustrating now, what new, how do I get better at the Illustrator or writing technology present? How am I researching how other people are writing and like what more experienced writers are doing at the moment and how I can incorporate that.
It's strange, Jeff. Most of my research comes in buying independent comics.
And
Part
we're
of
just
my
talking about
research-
that.
Yeah.
It's like not only does it help gauge what's popular and what's not at the moment, and like what your story, when that zeitgeist would look like, but also you going through and taking notes like, okay, what does their dialogue look like? What does their line look like? That's definitely very valuable.
Yeah, and you get some, I don't know, I just like to see what people who are just kind of making comics in their house by themselves, what people come up with that don't have an editor and overseer.
Yeah.
But just kind of doing their own thing. Image would be that too.
Yeah.
Image is a little more popular in Dark Horse because I think Dark Horse has editors. But I
Dark Horse
don't.
has editors, but they're kind of like our editors here, but they're more so project editors. Like they're there
Yeah.
just to make sure that all the parts are working together.
Right, because I think a lot of stuff in Dark Horse is still independent. I
Yeah.
know Image. I don't think Image has
Uh,
editors per se, not like series editors like Marvel and DC.
No, they will occasionally assign someone to you if they like what you're doing, but they say it needs a little more polish. But
Yeah.
for the most part, if you have your book completed, they'll like, okay, great, we'll accept this. We'll have an editor's give it a once over, and then if you have a colorist, great. If not, we'll find one and then we'll push it out. Yeah. But yeah, Dark Horse. Now I believe they had just closed their open submissions, but their submissions are in and out on accepting completed books.
Right.
But they're usually the point where like, if they hire you, they expect you to know what you're like to not need too much hand holding, like to go through and do like passes for quality.
Mhm.
But for the most part, the editor is just there to make sure that everybody's getting all the documents they need.
Okay.
Yeah. But I also mentioned that doing market research, just seeing what's popular right now. And according to our 2021 metrics, Spawn, very popular. Darker gunslinger character is very popular. I mean, number 1 for best-selling last year was King Spawn. After that, House of Slaughter. 3, Gunslinger Spawn. Number 4, Berserker. Number 5, Venom. So if you're writing a dark, gritty vigilante, you're in a good market right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I think once he started going more, I think Spawn kind of got popular when he actually started doing extra series, like other series, because people had a place to jump in on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I looked at Spawn, but like he did issue 300, and I was like, no, that's okay.
That's I'll mention this right now, but like looking at the analytics and seeing where Marvel really started surpassing DC is when they started bringing in those like annual refreshes. Like people like having an issue 1 if they're just getting into comics, or if they're just bouncing between titles. They like having an issue 1, like, okay, this is my jumping on point. I can.
Yeah. I think I think the sort of legacy comics, I know, can be intimidating to people getting into comics, especially characters they see. I mean, if you see Spawn has been on a long time, but if you see like the Marvel DC movies, those characters have been around for years, so it's very hard to know where to jump in. If you see a movie that's based more of a limited series, well, you just go get 6 issues or 4 issues out of the series, and then you're done. So I think it's a little more like I just watched The Crow recently. Like The Crow is 1 book. I mean, just go get the book. So I think there's a little more intrigue. I think there would actually be more direct sales if it was more like an enclosed package, because I know a lot of people, and like I've had other artists and people talk about that when they do the movies, they go into like the Avengers and stuff, and they want what's in the movie, and then they're like, yeah, but who are these new characters? What's this isn't like the movie. And so they immediately just lose interest.
That's like I was gonna say this, but recently gaining a boost in popularity from the TV show getting more and more fleshed out. Moon Knight came in number 7 last year, and it was also a year that Moon Knight had a refresh. They had a Moon Knight number 1, so people were like, are watching their Disney Plus trailers, like, oh, this looks weird, and then they go to the comic store and like, oh, there's a Moon Knight number 1. I can just get straight into what's going to happen. Like, yeah.
I've always thought characters like the Grendel was one, but other characters were
the fact they were getting a Grendel show also.
Yeah, they're doing a Grendel like TV series, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. But just like you can read kind of any Grendel story, and like it's its own thing. Like War
it's
Child.
really just books,
Yeah, and you could War Child and not have to know anything about any of the other Grendels. I think there's a little bit of power to that he is a legacy character, but there's so many jumping on points. Just pick the Crows did become the same way. With their multiple stories, with each Crow story was its own story. You didn't need to know anything about the other characters. I think Marvel and DC, I think people like continuity because they feel like it's fun to dive into the history. But people who just want to buy a comic when it's like issue 149 or something,
it can be a little intimidating.
They don't know what to start.
And I think also for like some people are like I find myself as kind of like a hybrid where like I like collecting my things I like collecting, but for things I just want to get like the story. So where some things are laid out again, I think it's one of the best decisions Marvel made, but the refreshes where like I know that like okay, like I'm collecting as it goes, but if I know that like okay, what's this one story that like I want to like find or want to reference, I'm like okay, it's just this year's 1 through 12, or there's this year's back then, like there's their 1 through 12 or whatever, and like okay, that's that one story they can just package together. I don't have to go through and like okay, it's issues like 357, 400, blah blah blah. Yeah,
and I'm surprised they didn't do that, because I mean, like when they did X-Men Days of Future Past, that story was just 2 issues long. They could have just put like a little graphic novel out in the theater or something, and it was a standalone story for the most part. You didn't really need to know anything else about it. They've missed, I was surprised they didn't put out the Dark Phoenix saga more. That's a little bit in continuity, but not as much. I think there's been some missed opportunities with some of these people, some of these comic people, to capitalize on their property, especially if they're singular stories.
Yeah, and I think that's to get back on topic, and that's where like the continuing education on the market itself as a business side also really comes in handy. Is if you're watching and seeing like, okay, what's selling the most? Number ones. People like issue number 1. Like, with the exception of Venom, and Venom was a 35. That was the conclusion of the Keenan Black arc.
Okay, so that was it. So no wonder that probably got a boost because it's an ending story.
And 55, which is Amazing Spider-Man's end in that same arc. All of the top 20, even more so, are issue number 1s from last year.
Yeah,
it's people like having a jumping on point.
And I think companies kind of overdo that too, because they know that people like number 1, so they just throw stuff out there, and we're always in a number 1.
I think, but even when they pitch number 1s, a lot of the number 1s, especially in Marvel and DC, still have back history. In other words, like if you do a number 1 of a character, it's like this is a number 1 issue, but the character is introduced in this other series, so you kind of need to know about that to understand what's happening in number 1.
Yeah,
they do that too, instead of having a completely fresh story.
Yeah, no, I think, and then while watching this from like a business point of view, like you start putting together like, okay, if we're wanting to fit what people want, like, okay, so we need to have refreshes, or we need to have essentially consistent jumping on points. Well, what are some complaints about this? Well, like people want a complete jumping on point. Like, well, okay, so if we're doing number 1, it needs to be a fresh number 1. It's okay, even if this character has existed, this is, it's like the Sherlock BBC stuff where like season 2 is its own thing.
Yeah.
And
you don't need to really, you just need to know he's Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Mike Golling's book is made to be a 1 sitting read, one and done.
Yeah.
That way, if somebody picks up the book, it's done. There's no, and I don't have any sequels planned for it. And there's no prequel, there's no prior knowledge. I do think more singular stories are great for hooking newer readers, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but I think a lot of people get into comics through Marvel and DC because that's what's known about American comics. But those are also the most intimidating to new collectors. A lot of Image stuff and independent stuff is actually more reader friendly because most of it is self-contained stories, a shorter story.
You can buy like 1 or 2 volumes and you got the complete story. Or like if you're following something like a Spawn, we're like, okay, well, what's the new Spawn number 1? Okay, it's what's a medieval one? I think it's just called Medieval, but it's like
it's called Medieval. This Gunslinger Spawn, what is
Gunslinger Spawn? Is Gunslinger Spawn. He was like medieval, but it's spelled like evil. But not the actual like epoch name. But you might go there like, okay, so this is a brand new thing. It's a number 1, and it's the core concept is that it's Spawn, whole new setting, whole new whatever. It's just and so that makes it very. I think it's also why Spawn did so well, is because a lot of people were able to jump into issue number 1s, and it's just its own concept. You don't need to know the whole back history of the deal and everything like that.
Yeah,
there's King Spawn, the Gunslinger Spawn, and the Scorched.
Yeah, I think Medieval Spawn was a couple of years ago, but example from one that I have.
And I think the one thing that Tom McFarlane does, and he does well, is I do think his art style does lend a lot of credence to his books. Whether you like his style or not, it's very exaggerated. It's very, the cape is flowing, it's bombastic, it just looks cool. Yeah. He said that many a time. I do think there's something to that. I do
Yeah.
think he does a really good job of doing that sort of superhero comic book art.
Mm-hmm.
And because I talk to so many people who are in the comics, casually in the comics, and inevitably all of them have no Spawn have heard of Spawn.
Yeah.
And Spawn, that dude's cool with the cape and the chains,
Yeah.
and so I think he gets in a lot of new readers and newer people just because it visually looks cool and it's eye catching.
Yeah.
A lot of comics are that way to a point, but not. They don't like. How do I say this? I don't think that sometimes comics really sell the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be guilty of this the same too, selling the story or whatever. But Spawn, he's selling the character like you sell Batman.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a cool character. I know a bunch about him. My own personal Godlings is really more about the story and there's multiple characters. So
yeah, that's like,
yeah.
With Wolf Hunter coming out now, like it's definitely I think it's more so selling the story because it's
Yeah.
how many like comics are like there's a lot of thriller stories or spy comics, but how many of them are a World War II technology based spy thriller
Right.
comic? And so like that's just kind of that's the fun thing about it. Another comic that is currently being worked on by art currently being worked on by Jem Dioglu is very much going to be selling the characters because holy cow, those are some of the most fun concepts for characters I've ever created, and he is doing such a good job with them.
Yeah.
But
Because sometimes it's the characters. I mean, the next comic I'm doing is very much a main character, one character. It's not a group, and so I'm selling it based on the character design, or especially the main character, his uniqueness. But I think there is a style of comic book art, and I think it was kind of. I think he's kind. I don't want to compare him to Jack Kirby, but that sort of energy and bombastic art of Jack Kirby, I think McFarlane has really taken that and expanded on it. That sort of bombastic things flying around. I mean, I'm looking at an image right now for one of and it's like you see like capes and stuff flying around, and he's always been very good at that.
Yeah.
I had my own weird opinions. I thought Spawn was a cool character. I didn't really understand if he's a Spawn of Hell why he would have a superhero costume per se, but then again, that's
comics.
It was cool at the time,
Yeah. Kind of doubling back to talking about education and research. You kind of saw us actually piece together like what market research looks like if you're creatives in the space is how do we theory craft this, and how do we what do you think is working about this, what do we think we like about this, and then maybe if you apply it to our own stuff, how do we use that to sell our own stuff,
right?
But before we even get to the marketing part of things, you have to know, or you have to put the comic together, and for that you need to have your toolkit, and in order to learn what tools you need to get certified on, or you need to at least educate yourself on, you need to know what tools are out there. So before you know that, okay, I need to go, if I want to go get hired at a big illustration firm and then use that to position myself at the big two, maybe I need to get certified in Adobe Illustrator. First, you need to learn that Adobe Illustrator exists, which you probably should because it's literally everywhere. But in general, that's the arc of things. So Quentin had mentioned earlier that his main thing that he's been watching this week has been the news. But there is another kind of news that creators usually find themselves in. It's the fun kind of news, and that's either that's the industry specific news. It's following Ars Technica or The Verge on okay, this software package just dropped. How's it going to make me write better, or how's it going to help me write more efficiently? I'm sure Quentin mentioned as well, but there's a ton of illustration packages and art packages that you don't know unless you're following this space and researching it, and know that these alternatives to Eclipse Studio or Illustrator exist.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, go ahead, Quentin. You had something to say?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I read the comment. Thank you, Tommy. Great inking this week too, buddy. I saw your inking on Trumps, man. I'm so excited about that book. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. You're right. I usually I don't research a lot of art programs per se because I guess I do a lot of stuff by analog and I kind of use programs for simple. But I do research comics art styles and then I'll do research in video games. I do research, I guess, for how things are put together. Like that comic I've said, the Sithra comic I read,
Yeah.
which is like he's doing kids books and comic books put together. Like anytime there's a unique idea, I'm researching at different ways to approach comics or tell stories in comics. That's more what I'm researching right now. Less about art tools or whatever. If I have an idea and how I want to approach it, then I would just utilize what tools I have to make that come true. In other words, like I tell people who try to learn Photoshop, I mean, you take a lot of Photoshop classes and they'll go through the program and show you what all the buttons do. And every time they do that, like you never remember half of what he said because it's like 2 hours I'm going over buttons. Like I don't remember any of that shit.
Yeah, you really need that in video form.
Right. And the reason you don't remember is because there's no context to it. If you made something you liked with those buttons and those things, you would remember it more. You learn better by doing. So I'm like, somebody wants to learn Photoshop or whatever, make something in Photoshop. You'll learn it because there's a context to what you're learning instead of just playing with the buttons.
We kind of mentioned this earlier, but one of the tools that I picked up from a guy that I'm currently watching, working on some IT certifications is like in order the thing that he said, like in order to learn anything or like finish your educational path for like a continued educational thing, you need a great video resource, a great written resource, and a great lab. And if you're putting in that lab work and actually like using the Pomodoro method, okay, spend 25 minutes watching the video, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes working in the lab doing what you just learned, and 5 minutes off, go back to the video for 25 minutes, whatever like you need to do to like make that stuff sink in.
Yeah.
I just want to add something here about this piece of art. I've made a crucial mistake.
Oh no.
I don't know. Does anybody see it?
Isn't it supposed to be Skeletor's head supposed to be on He-Man's body?
Yeah. Well, this is one of those things that I was talking about in one of our other things. Sometimes when you're doing art, and Aaron, you'll know what I'm talking about, especially like when you're doing comic art, there's so many things you have to take into consideration. And it doesn't matter that I broke the rule. I'm going to go with it anyway because I like it. But there is a rule that if you have two characters facing the same way or close together, then they seem to be together. Your mind just kind of does that. So what I've done here is I've accidentally got them facing the same way, so it kind of looks like they're
buddies.
They should be opposing. They should be looking, but it's too late now. So I'm going with it.
Like I said, if you wanted to cut out Skeletor, but I don't. Yeah.
Well, I've actually got him on a separate layer here.
Flip him around. Just.
I did.
Did it work or did it not?
It just doesn't look right.
It looks like he's probably with the way he's at it. Probably look like he's about to eat He-Man's head.
Yeah.
With his mouth, because you flip it around.
Let me take this off.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was just going to throw that in there. I didn't mean to break in on y'all.
No. I think you could actually fix that.
I've been trying to figure this out as I'm sketching it. And and you see that it should be like this. There should be an opposing angle. And I may even still do this. I'm going to work on it some more. This is the phase in a drawing where I'm kind of moving stuff around. Yeah. But man, I could really, go with that. But I think it's going to be too glaring of a mistake to.
I think maybe I think what you can do is I could think you can fix it in color. So if you make He-Man more bright, saturated,
well, I'll definitely do that because
he's more darker.
Background.
Yeah,
I'll definitely do that. So that he'll shine a little bit more and kind of have him more of a ghost image and then have this even more back there.
Because the only other thing I could say doing is it might be easier. What would it cost you to turn He-Man's head the other way? So he's looking at
I did that a while ago as well. I tried turning He-Man and then I tried turning Skeletor. And the only thing I don't like is his sword gets cut off a little bit.
Okay, I see that. Yeah.
And that's one of the main things. He-Man is the main character, but the sword is its own character. So, pretty much, anyway. But yeah, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, you're in the preliminary stages, so.
Oh yeah.
I know it
Y'all
sucks
think
to redraw stuff, but sometimes I've
cape
done
or
that.
no cape? Deltoids, no deltoids.
I actually like the cape.
It is the little Jon Snowy, but I do like it.
Yeah.
I was thinking Conan. Conan does a lot of that winter type stuff.
Yeah.
The only thing, and I might say, and take this as as you will, as a grain of salt. I like the sword. The sword almost is a little too horizontal considering the vertical elements.
It should be like a little bit more turned back or turned up more.
Turned up more or something, because it just, you have almost like these vertical elements and almost a straight horizontal line cutting through that. And I don't know how hard it would be and I would think it would just be
I'm doing digital, man. Nothing's hard. I can change whatever I want to.
Yeah, you're in the preliminary stage. That's why I'm telling you this now.
I'm just kidding. You were talking the other night about when there was a few lines that I copied and pasted. I cheated.
Yep.
And I was just kind of giving a call back to that. That was funny.
This is also illustrating kind of the last point I'll make, is that we at Silverline also try to position ourselves not just as a publisher, but also as a continuing education resource. That's like the whole point of our thrice weekly shows and our craft blog posts, is that we understand that, in order to keep on improving ourselves, one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. But also for indie creators, you don't get too many resources that are have as much production value as you try to put into this, or are as not done as like 30-minute very dry and this is how you do this style stuff. So for us to position us like this way, I think this is something that we tried to do, make ourselves both a little unique, because
people are fun, but the underlying foundational art you have to learn can be kind of dry.
Definitely. And
this is a thing I see a lot with young artists, is learning the basic foundation with sports art is boring a little.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely. It's boring. You want to draw He-Man and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But before you can do that, you kind of need to learn all the other stuff.
You need to know your anatomy, your geometry.
Yeah.
And so, market research, people like brands that interact more so as personalities that aren't just, face and wall pushing books at you. And this is a way to do it, but in a way that actually adds value and isn't just us trying to, be like, hey kids, we're hip on Twitter. It's, us trying to actually provide value more so.
Yeah. By the way, Quentin, is this a commission for somebody?
Yeah. Yep. It's commissioned for a friend of mine.
Oh.
But yeah, I definitely think that in the future episodes, I do want to have more so like hard. We've done definitely like this is definitely a soft skill, and we've done a lot of soft skill style videos. We want to do more hard skill videos where we actually do have like you and Quentin work through something on Clip Studio or Illustrator and actually like work through the process and like demonstrate as you're going along, or I'll go through and like break down, you'll
be the play-by-play. Now you see what he's doing here is
exactly. Yeah. Well, have you guys break down stuff, but or do one where like I do a breakdown of like the pre-writing of a story, or like if you're scripting something, like here's like thinking and plotting and thinking in terms of arcs and like how would your editor look at this?
Yeah. Hey Quentin, just out of curiosity, I wonder what Skeletor's. I'm listening to you too. I'm just looking at Skeletor's head. If it was a little bigger and tilted, so he was facing a little more down towards. I wonder if you tilted Skeletor's head, that might. I don't know. I was just playing with it. It might, he's kind of almost looking at He-Man. I don't know. I was just playing with it. Maybe he's gazing lovingly at He-Man. I mean, he is,
Yeah.
Sexy,
I think he does have a bit of a, thing for He-Man.
Who doesn't? I mean, look at that guy.
Yeah. Look at the butt on him.
I know.
He must work out. Was it old Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah.
Yeah. He must work out.
So, not to change the subject, what is your guys' favorite Master of the Universe characters?
Man, I like Man at Arms.
I have him. He's one of my favorites. I did buy him, the new one, the Revelations version, 'cause I thought it was really well done.
I've got him, but I can't have him to my birthday.
Well.
I've got the Origins one. I like Man at Arms. Tila's hot. I really like I like Trapjaw, but I don't know if I like the Masterverse Revelations version of him.
Yeah,
because of the mouth.
I saw that, and I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, Trapjaw is one of my favorites. I think one of my favorite Trapjaws was the 2012 He-Man cartoon. They did a Trapjaw of him, which I thought was really cool. I always like Cyclops because of the spinning visor and stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I think before you came in, I was showing Tim. I've got a few of these.
Oh yeah. See, that's a cool Trapjaw.
Kind of my versions of them. Yeah, I made his eyes black, and he's supposed to be a cyborg, so I put some little things in his eyes there. These are just roughs, but
yeah,
I like the smaller helmet. Here for.
Yeah, because I'm looking at my Man at Arms, and he does. I like this smaller helmet too. So I was actually thinking about this because I have it on my shelf looking the other night. Do you think his green skin is a leotard thing he's wearing, or do you think that's his actual skin?
According to the 2000X line, yeah, it's like a suit.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought.
I always wondered that growing up.
Because it's like, yeah.
Because he's got like a white head and a green body. Weird.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but it works. It's funny. It's educational. So I've often wondered what would happen if Silverline started offering like classes or something, like educational stuff. But like, I'd be curious if anybody like looking at other people's artwork and talking about it, or like somebody sending. What was it? Something a few days ago, I think, where people were talking about people's pitches, story pitches and stuff. I thought that might be kind of interesting. It's funny how we've done some educational stuff, but not as much sometimes. Like, are you talking about like?
Somebody making popcorn or washing dishes?
I just have some background noise. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
But Aaron kind of faded out there. What were you asking?
Oh, I was just kind of wondering, do you kind of think education more just like the industry knowledge we talk about, or more like teaching story, or like you teaching writing and teaching art, like more practical stuff?
Right now we've definitely been more just general industry knowledge. But originally craft was focused on like hard skills and like approaching line work in a certain way, and we even did some of the early like podcast episodes that way. And I think it'd be kind of fun to revisit some of that for some later episodes. But we're kind of offer a overall perspective into general comics, like continuing education of like, this is like this is how you critique someone's art piece and like position someone in a photo, and then also working on this is the general concept of how do you study stuff more often, and how do you learn how things are changing. Yeah, so I think sorry, I've been kind of more focused on the soft skills, on this like industry side skills, but I think it'll be kind of fun to approach a hard skill again in the coming weeks, and actually
because we did that for a while, and then I think we've gone into more of like this general industry knowledge, soft skills sort of stuff. Even again, teaching art and writing, there's. Like I said, it would have to be a particular question. This is such broad subjects. Like if somebody's like, "How do you become a better writer?" It's like,
what subject you want to move on?
Yeah, that's a huge subject. It would be like, how do you get better at writing? Like maybe a particular genre. So I don't know. Something of that nature. Ideas.
Well, that's always the things like the general school, like the general advice of someone is like, how to become a better writer, better like illustrator. Like, well. Consume, research, and do, which is kind of like what we just kind of talked about. Is like you need a good like course, a good book, and a good like lab to actually do it in. But specifically, how do you what's the course you go on, or what's the lab you do? And so I think it'd be kind of fun to do something where we have I don't know if anyone has like custom macros or like custom like done stuff to their UI like you can do in Adobe or Clip Studio, where like right? How do you have this laid out? What makes it work better for you? Like, how would you suggest people set up their clip studio if they're just getting
Things
into
of that.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do that. I would have to prepare for something like that, though. I'd like to have some kind of like lesson plan to go off of. But that'd just be me, though.
Yeah, if Quentin go back to his teacher days, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing like being unprepared for something like that,
Yeah.
and then having to, sit and talk about what you're doing, because a lot of times, you just get quiet and start doing it and not teaching what you're doing.
Because he asked, have you guys ever thought about reviewing newbie stuff and giving pointers? I already kind of do that as an editor. I'm one of the approving editors, so when submissions get sent in, I have to review that and then send feedback back.
I also think it's invaluable to work in a studio environment or with other people, because what just happened just a second ago, look, this already looks better.
Yeah.
Just from getting a little bit of, rubber banding back and forth from you guys. This is going to look 10 times better now. And I'm following the rules now.
Yeah. But I definitely think
I'm not breaking the law.
I definitely think you could do something. I don't know if we'd be able to get enough submissions to make a full show of reviewing people's submitted artwork or writing material. I think it would be kind of like a fun thing if people submitted it to kind of do what in the writer's room is called a break session, where you're literally trying to break everything and say like, well, I ever thought about this. This doesn't work because of this. This doesn't work because of this. This works great because of this. Do more of that. But I think if we could get enough submissions, that'd be once a month would be kind of like as an addendum to a show. That would be kind of interesting. But I don't know what you guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, we could have a segment devoted to that, like once a month. That'd be cool.
Yeah. It might be something that we could do just on the Silverline website, just as like a weekly entry, like do like a video entry where we have like one of our Silverline creators from, because we kind of fun also to get like, if someone specifically submits to coloring, if we can, we don't have any like dedicated colorists on the Tuesday show, but if we get someone like Barb or Roberta to come in, like do their video take on it, that'd be kind of pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear her teach some about coloring, because she's so fast and good. I mean, she's just solid all the way around. Tommy with inking. I'd like to know what he's thinking. You get to see him do his artwork during the show, but man, if he was, saying exactly what he was doing and why at certain parts, that would be great.
Right. Definitely.
I could steal his techniques.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, is it's all the past you show. You take in the influence that you have, you figure out how that works best for you, and then you just vomit out your own work.
That's right. Well, that's how you learn. Theft.
Yep.
Knowledge theft.
Wasn't it also Voltaire that said all artists theft?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can only, it's like the old saying goes, we can only report on things that we've seen and heard. Of course, there is stuff that occurs to you, but I mean, on another hand, that it doesn't all just occur to you. In the end, when you get proficient at something, you can really make some some real changes to something, or really do something original, but you got to get there first and see what else has been done before you can really come up with real good original stuff.
That's the thing, is like all the unique skill really comes down to how you process that input. Because I mean, if you're looking at like get really weird with it, but if you're looking at something like Picasso's Brown period or something from Van Gogh, it looks weird and interesting, but it's all something like you have probably seen the same type of input they have. It's just that they processed it differently and was able to create a different output because of that.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lesson, or somebody did. I think it was Disney back in the day. They had a bunch of artists draw the same tree, and then looked at how each artist interpreted that tree differently. Yeah,
definitely.
So.
We're coming close to the end of our show here, but we haven't got a catch up with
Aaron.
Yet.
End?
I know.
Already?
We haven't got a catch up yet with Aaron because he joined a little late. So, Aaron, this week, what have you been reading, watching, playing, listening to? casually perusing.
Still playing Neo 2, the game that never ends. I think some of my biggest gripe with video games is sometimes there's a lot of video games that could have ended like 20 hours before they end. It's like, yeah, this could have been a good, but they'll just keep going and going. And I don't know. I know it's this sort of like, well, we give you as much bang for your buck. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes it just becomes busy work. I'm still enjoying it, but it's like,
yeah, feels like filler.
It feels like filler. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I started watching Vox Machina, the first episode.
I still need to watch that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like the first one. I need to catch up on the Dota series. I watched the first season of that. And then I've been finishing up an anime series called Record of Lotus War, which is a series. As far as comics, I've been reading some interesting independent comics. I was reading a run called Locust. That's actually pretty cool. Kind of almost like a grindhouse horror comic, which I think is like kind of action horror comic. Like the main character, the reason I can't show it is the main lady's like a half succubus, so she just starts like fighting topless, which strange enough would seem like it would be like, over sexualized, but it doesn't, because she's a succubus. It just kind of, I don't know, the way he does her character. I don't know. I guess this guy, I think he finished the series. I found those on Indie Planet.
Nice.
I'm trying to think of what else I've been reading. I did rebuy The Crow because I have the old softback and I rebought the hardback because it's been a few years. So I'm gonna read that. As far as I did see the Batman.
What'd you think? I haven't seen it yet.
It was okay. I don't
that's
know.
what I've heard from everybody.
It's
okay, but
I feel like I'm going to be more so like I'll be more so on the same camp as Roland and give it my own 10 out of 10, because this, from the reviews I've been reading, it seems to match my taste.
Yeah, I think my biggest gripe with the movie, not giving away spoilers, is I think the writer tried to write a detective story but didn't really give Batman like a means to do detecting. Most of the answers he comes upon are given to him by somebody else at random, it does not that scene where Batman's looking at all the evidence and like formulating a plan, or like, he'll answer a few riddles and then somebody will say something and he'll be like, okay, and then I'll go look at it. I'm like, well, no, Batman's like should be looking at the evidence and based on the evidence figure out what is going on, and there's never that moment. So it felt like they tried to write a detective story, but he was always like, for a detective, like 3 steps behind. And it's like one guy in a comment section says like, no, Batman should be like 2 steps ahead of the enemy, and he's not. And there's a few things like there was one guy pointed out a glaring flaw, and now that you pointed out, I can't overlook it. I can't. It's like one of these things that's like the most.
Don't tell me.
We're hearing the flaws. Yeah,
it's like one of the most typical like things you would check out as a detective, and he doesn't, and we're just like. And so the Batmobile was cool, and I thought some of the fight scenes, I did think it needed to be trimmed a lot. That movie just goes and goes and goes and goes, and so but it was just. I don't know. I mean, it was like, I think there is a way to write a detective. I'm not a detective writer, but I do know that you should give your detectives, they should have the edge in the story. They should be smarter than the bad guy. And if you're not smarter than the bad guy, then it doesn't make you look like a detective. It looks like somebody who's just stumbling upon the answers.
Sure.
And that's what, and it was not, and to me, it wasn't like, oh, this is subtle. It was like a glaring thing that kept happening, and I'm like, okay, this is making Batman look dumb instead of smart, and that was my biggest gripe with it.
Sure.
So
okay. Oh, there is that. Again, we like to encourage you to head on over to Kickstarter.com. I'm from Boston now. Kickstarter.com/RolandMan/projects/RolandMan to go ahead and follow our new Kickstarter coming out here on the 10th. It's going to be
Masters of the Universe.
Yes.
It's going to be hot.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Our brand new idea, Masters of the Universe. No, it's going to be Cyrus from my former instructor, Sid Williams. And the remix of that, as well as Wolf Hunter #1, which is my own brainchild, which is a detective story. And the character does have his own agency. He does interrogation forensics before that's really science. So back when it was called, oh, you have an eye for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get to have some fun with that. It's going to be a good pickup in my opinion. And also, I just want people to buy my comics, read them, enjoy them, and just have a fun time. So
I didn't know you write.
Yeah, on occasion.
On occasion.
Yeah. But yeah, we have
every day.
I know. We have been That Tuesday crew.
Yes.
So any last minute checkoffs, remarks, comments, questions, concerns from our panel of guests?
Aaron, I appreciate you coming in, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, stopping by and seeing you guys. Good.
Yeah. Hopefully you got a good placement
on the art too.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got a good placement in your trivia night.
Yeah, I did answer one or two questions. I mean, they had like who played the lead doctor in the Avatar movie, and I was like, well, Sigourney Weaver. So you know, but there was some other stuff where it's like, what continent has the largest herd of camels?
Mm-hmm.
No. So yeah, there was some really obscure questions. I'm like, I don't know.
My trivia claim to fame was the question, what interwar event signaled the end of the British Empire and the coming of the modern era to the continent of Africa? It's like the 1937 Suez Canal incident.
That was right?
Yes. Or it was the 1947 Suez Canal incident, but yes. Yeah,
I got a history question for you that you might be interested in before you go really quick. So it was supposed to be, what was the first war that actually had the first jet dogfight? Both sides having jets.
Jets. Not planes. Jets.
Not planes, jets.
Okay. See, my thought would be Korea at that point, but
yeah, that's right.
Okay, it was, but also the Luftwaffe did have the B-3 rocket jet, but I don't believe the Allies had.
They did, but nobody else did.
Yeah,
because that's what I thought. Because the answer was World War II, Korea, or Vietnam. I know they had jets in Vietnam, but I don't think the Viet Cong had jets. But I'm not.
They had Russian pilots were flying for the Viet Cong at that point.
Okay, so they did have them. But yeah, because I know, like, I think the Tuskegee Airmen were the first ones to encounter the actual Nazi jets or the German jets, but I'm not sure if they're the first ones. I know they did encounter them. Yeah. But yeah, that was the first one. But only the Axis side had them. It wasn't. But yeah, because I thought, well, when I first saw them, like World War II, but then like both sides, I'm like, well, then that would be Korea.
Yeah. And also, fun fact: the first European-born combat ace has, since World War II, we've got confirmation that there is a Ukrainian pilot who is the first one to gain more than 3 aerial victories in one deployment.
Oh wow!
So yeah,
that's cool.
Yep. All right. Well, we have been we've been your Tuesday show. This has been 2 hours of
Trivia Tuesday.
This has been 2 hours of continuing education as a comics professional, and then 3 minutes at the end there about war history. We'll come back Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Wednesday Wham. I will also be on there because we might have some special Wolf Hunter themed things going on. And again, keep your eyes peeled to that Kickstarter for Wolf Hunter and Sirens. Come back on Sunday for Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be back here on Tuesday. Until the time,
make mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.